Well, today was the filing deadline, and it certainly was newsworthy, wasn't it? Welcome into my State of Mind. I am Dan York. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here each and every night. Now, for the last handful of evenings, we have had a broadcast that did not have my usual rundown, where we break down the issues and I opine on all sorts of things, and you can return your thought on your state of mind and all that, coupled with whatever guest or guests for the evening that we have. We are back to that format because due to some production schedules and days off and that kind of stuff, we had to do those kind of shows. But it's actually nice to kind of let it go every once in a while. How about those kids from LaSalle and Wheeler, and important conversation last night about health and drug addiction, and you can continue to look forward to over the course of the summer those kinds of days, maybe back to back to back, depending on a vacation or whatever, and some replays of some of those conversations, because we've got a lot in the tank. But it's always great to get back same day, same bat channel, and get after the issues of the day. And today we have Lieutenant Governor candidate Dan McKee scheduled last week for this evening, and he is here. He pulled, I think, a strategically smart thing last week when he denied the endorsement from the party. So we'll talk about some of those politics. And we have more candidates on the Lieutenant Governor slate since I scheduled Dan in here, and so there's plenty to talk about there. But let us go to the rundown for what is the only item on it. Let me tell you something. This is kind of funny. So here's what a script looks like. You're not going to be able to read it because the camera won't do. But here's what see all those items on the script? Those are all the items that I'm reading when you're seeing them on the paper. A little inside television for you here. After watching Buddy Cianci today, I join the media that have fed into the sucking the oxygen completely out of the room. We're only going to talk about that. Not lengthily, but I have some things to say. So let's go back this way. And that was the whole preview of the rundown. Here is the rundown. You can put that up again, Kevin, because it really does. And here's the dynamic that I think is fascinating. Pitiful in some ways, but fascinating. The press has done a pretty good job of aiding and abetting Buddy Cianci's now announced run for mayor in two ways. Feeding his monstrous ego by trailing him around and actually setting up shop at the WPRO radio studios. Just absolutely listening for every word. Stationing people all around. Willie, is his filer down at the office at the canvassing board? What's happening at the radio station? I precede Buddy on WPRO from noon to 3, and as I walked out the studio today, I see a lot of my friends and colleagues in the media, and I thought, okay, the circus is now in town. The media, by its decision as to what's newsworthy, sucks the oxygen out of the political room by its own doing. The media will report on how the Cianci candidacy has sucked the oxygen out of the entire 2014 political season. But in essence, it's only because the media itself is doing it. You get that? So I think that the media should send a bill to Buddy Cianci for their in-kind contribution to his announcement today. I'm not suggesting that his announcement is not newsworthy. He's the two-time former mayor, convicted felon, broadcaster. But for him to be able to pull this stunt off only shows this kind of weird, perverse grip that he has on this community. So much so that he actually was able to pull off until 3:20 this afternoon, saying on the air that he had not yet made a decision. Now, tomorrow night, when we've got more time, because our production schedule, we record this program the same day in the late afternoon. We only have his announcement for you to show you. But at 3:20, he was still pulling this stunt, which is, I haven't made my decision, I haven't made my decision. Now, all along, I've been telling you that the source material I had out there had him running. And All I've been asking from my fellow members of the press is that they do the same kind of great work they do on things like 38 Studios. I'm not targeting any particular media outlet or specific reporters. Resources are thinner and thinner in local media these days, but the skill set is there. The job wasn't done. And you get hurt because you actually are walked around by your tail, pulled by your tail by a guy who can say, I don't know, I'm thinking, I'm still thinking, when he had put all the things in place to be able to launch that campaign on the day that he announced it. And how did we know that? When he finally pulled this thing out, we'll show you this tomorrow night, when he finally made his decision, or in the radio show today decided to make his decision, he pulls out, this, just how many pages was it? 4? 6-page presentation. And he apologizes and says, by the way, it's not like I'm making this decision on the spur of the moment. I'm paraphrasing. Anyway, last night, Jared Planner caught up to Buddy Cianci. If you were watching Jared's report last night, you got a good feel for where this whole thing was going. Here's a short clip from it.
I love being on television. I love being on the radio. I love a relaxed lifestyle, but I've had enough of that for 7 or 8 years now. And maybe it's time to move on to something else. I'm still a young guy.
I thought that was more or less the final punctuation. So, good for Jared for getting that bit of news. But here was the fire and brimstone at the end of what had to be, 10, 15 minutes worth of on this decision to run. Here was the core end of it, the big finale.
Some may see in this decision I announced today a tinge of deja vu, or whimsically label it as a localized version of Back to the Future. If they do, I would suggest to them that the back is my decades of experience and achievement as mayor of Providence, and the future is my optimistic but attainable vision of its continued progress. Providence demands a leader with experience and a proven mobilizer of civic endeavor. It cannot afford inexperience or on-the-job training. I am mindful of the intense public and media scrutiny that will be placed upon my third administration. I welcome it. I am mindful that the people will expect more from me than from any other candidate for public office in Rhode Island. They will not be disappointed. Today I submit to you my bid to bring fruition to the major urban program that was so auspiciously we began. My quest to cut the ribbon at both ends. Today, with a sense of humility, contrition, and confidence, I announce to you my candidacy for mayor of Providence. And there you have it. After a long speech, but it's there.
3:20 in the afternoon, he's still pulling everybody's chain. I'm not sure. It would have been better if he'd never brought out a speech and said, what the heck, let's run. It goes to show you that Buddy Cianci thinks he can manipulate anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I will tell you this, while I think he's a brilliant guy, and there are good arguments to elect him, and a lot of people will make them, and we'll talk about it over the course of the election, this guy thinks he's got it over on everybody. And in this particular episode, he did. And it's disgraceful. By the way, he's running as an independent, which I think is a tactical mistake on his part. I think he'd be better in a Democratic primary. I hear Lauren Adrain, who is a Democrat in the field, has now moved his candidacy to independent, which will help Buddy Cianci. If I didn't know any better, you'd think that Adrain was on the Cianci payroll, because any kind of bifurcating of the vote in the general election against a Democratic winner will help Cianci. But we'll have plenty of time for that analysis as we go. And by the way, Ernie Almonte filed as an independent for treasurer today. Interesting, bypassing the beating he might have taken from Frank Caprio and a Democratic primary. Or the other guy, Seth Magaziner. All right, speaking of politics and Democrats, we got one here. Dan McKee will tell you why he wants to be lieutenant governor again, and why he said, I don't need your stinking endorsement. Stay with us. So the other day, you might have seen this headline. I don't need your stinking endorsement, he says. Here's the headline. McKee asked Democrats to remove his name from consideration for endorsement in the race for Rhode Island lieutenant governor. is a strategic, is that strategery? Is that what that is? What do you got going there?
I think that it's just, it speaks for itself in terms of the fact that my position was that the governor was not going to get endorsed, and I asked that the lieutenant governor and down the ballot do the same thing so that we have party unity at the end of the campaign, and that was denied. So when that was denied, I pulled my name.
Good try. Right.
Yeah, I figured that maybe they would actually listen, but they didn't. And but the way I look at it is.
So let me see if I understand this. You actually asked them to make it. We should bring a little bit of context to this. By the way, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good to see you.
You don't have any special announcements today.
You know what?
Like you're not.
Well, before we get into that whole thing, do you have any thought about the oxygen out of the room with this fiasco over Cianci's candidacy? It's not going to help guys like you who are trying to carve out a little bit of a niche and attention for your run for lieutenant governor, a seat that a lot of people think shouldn't even exist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unless you got a special announcement, I'm going to get trumped on this show.
What are you talking about?
Well, just like if you're running for something.
No, I'm not running for anything.
No, okay. I just wondered whether you were going to take.
What is
take it out
is the rumor out?
You're
You're waiting for me to pull out my speech? No, but you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
It's a challenge for you on what would be considered a down ticket race.
Yes.
As important as you think it is, the electorate might have a different frame of reference for it, and it's going to be even more difficult for you to get attention. And Frank Caprio and Frank Ferry. Ralph Mollis and Frank Ferry on the Democratic side, and now Catherine Taylor on the Republican side.
Oh yeah, we won't compare in terms of the type of publicity that's going to carry, but we just move on.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, you can't do anything. I got my headquarters in Providence, right on Cranston Street. I'm meeting a lot of good people, and I expect that we'll do very well in the election.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. Is that about all you got? All right. Let's go back to let's go back to the mechanics of this endorsement process, because I think people need to understand that there's an old style politics that goes on between the major parties, Republicans and Democrats, and it is the endorsement. When the party says we endorse a candidate, it means nothing other than a signature and a stamp and maybe some organizational help along the way. But it's kind of like a pre-qualifying vote that really has, in some ways, no bearing on what the electorate is going to think, correct?
Yeah, it's really strong status quo, business as usual. I've been saying that the status quo is killing the state of Rhode Island, and this was an opportunity for our Democratic Party, quite frankly, to take a lead and say, look, we have a number of qualified candidates. We're not going to endorse at the top of the ticket. We're not going to endorse all the way down to through the bottom of the ticket. Let the people who vote in a Democratic primary determine who they're going to.
Well, I think it's a rather unorthodox decision by the Democrats to decide that they're not going to endorse gubernatorial candidates. Basically because the race is so tight between Gina Raimondo and Angel Taveras, and Clay Pell might be moving in a competitive direction. And then say, but all the others are competitive. I think it only waters down the effectiveness of whatever endorsement the party is going to give to any other race.
I've been signaling to leadership that was the thing to do to elect a Democratic governor. I've said that officially.
That you didn't want them to endorse.
That's correct. I think that we need to elect a Democratic governor in the state. We haven't had one for 20 years or more, and I think that it's important that we do, and I'll support that candidate. But on what does that endorsement picture look like? Okay, we're going to call a press conference. We're going to call all the endorsed candidates to the floor for a photo op, and there's no governor there. That's weak, and that's the message that I was delivering to the leadership. And then it also says something
so
about...
they didn't buy it, is what you're telling me. And so then you withdrew your name from consideration.
That's correct.
Is that, some might think that you're taking your ball and bat and going home?
No, because that's been consistent with my position all along, that they should not endorse inside the ticket.
Well, you weren't going to get the endorsement even if you thought it was the greatest thing in the world to get. Correct?
Until, depending on, this is the point, depending on what the leader said, or the speaker said. The speaker was going to determine what happened in that space. So
did you talk to Nick Mattiello, the House Speaker, about it?
I talked to a speaker about it.
Not the speaker?
Well, I made phone calls in, but he was pretty busy this time around. You know, this time of season. So I didn't speak specifically to Speaker Mattiello, but I did speak to Speaker Fox about it.
You did? What are you talking to Fox for? He's poison.
When he was Speaker.
Oh, then?
Yes.
Oh, so this conversation's been going on for a while.
This is my point. This has been my position for
It's
quite
been a
some
long
time.
day for me. Maybe
Yes,
you said
this
that.
has been my
I
position for
apologize.
quite some time, that we need to elect a Democratic governor. And it's very important that we elect a Democratic governor, because it is very likely that the lieutenant governor and the governor is going to run on the same ticket in 2018. And if you're looking to elect a Democratic governor and you don't, then you basically are going to give up the lieutenant governor's spot in 2018. Because an incumbent will have the advantage, a Republican incumbent will have the advantage. So I've been making that argument.
Bottom
for
line
quite
is,
some time.
we have the names for you. I mean, Kevin, do we have a slate there, just the names of the competitors, so everybody knows who we're talking about? On the left is the newcomer, Frank Ferry. How he came into this picture, I have no idea. We'll have him on as soon as he wants to come on and explain. Ralph Mollis, who's the Secretary of State right now, who did get the Democratic endorsement, and Catherine Taylor, who ran against Ralph Mollis for Secretary of State last time around in 2010, almost beat him, ended up working in the Chafee administration, and now has decided that she wants to be the lieutenant governor, because she's going to change the economy through that space,
Yes.
as the academician politician types like McKee call it. That's
She wanted to be
space.
Secretary of State, and then when Secretary Mollis decided he wanted to be a lieutenant governor, then I guess she felt as though that lieutenant governor was a place for her to go.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we'll talk about stuff like why he wants, in case you haven't heard it before, why he wants to be lieutenant governor, like issues, like stuff that actually matters when you decide who you're going to draw the line for. Stay with us. Welcome back. Dan McKee is the mayor of Cumberland, and most people objectively would say pretty successful mayor of Cumberland. How many terms? 5 terms or
6 terms. I'm
over
finishing
7? 6 terms
it's
over
over
7
14 years,
spots.
yes.
You got a little cocky on one local election and got clipped by then State Representative Dave Ewick.
Yes, I'm not making that mistake again.
Yeah, well, everyone's got to take a
Yes.
lump every once in a while.
That's
But you
right.
came back and you did well. All right, listen, lay him out real quick. Well, first of all, this guy Frank Ferry getting in the race, was that a surprise to you?
Yes.
Yes.
At that late in
Does
late
it help
in
or
the
hurt
session.
the competitive position, do you think?
I
you
think
have in the Democratic side?
that probably you could make an argument it helps everybody. They need less votes to win the primary.
Okay.
So
In other words, you really
So,
haven't thought much about it. You got to do your own thing.
yeah, well, it
Yes.
doesn't change. It doesn't change the way that we're acting in terms
All right,
of the
and
primary.
give everybody the principal reasons why the lieutenant governor's position is still important. A lot of people think it's not, and what you think you can do there to entrepreneurialize it, because it seems like that's all people want to do. They want to frame it the way they see it and visualize it, right?
Well, I think the office can carry a great deal of influence on the issues that matter in the state of Rhode Island, the jobs, the education issues, and the infrastructure issues. So, look, for 12 years, I've tried to build a community in Cumberland that people want to live in, not move away from, and we've been pretty successful. With bond ratings that went from junk bond to A bond, from schools that are continually improving, and investments that have been made in our infrastructure, and quite frankly, our finances are in pretty good shape. I think we're positioned with the police contract that we just signed to get it to another A rating. So let's build a state where people want to live in, that don't and not looking to move away
Let
from.
me specific. You're an education guy. You've
Yes.
built the mayoral academies.
Yes.
It's controversial. I think successful. It's my bias, but I think it's been a great project that you've worked on. You want to keep carrying that conversation through, correct?
Absolutely, and what I'm seeing out there, Dan, right now is that, and this was part of the backdrop of the decision not to take the endorsement or remove the name, is this status quo thinking is killing the state of Rhode Island. And
We
on
saw it last
education,
week.
it's the same thing. What I'm seeing right now is seeing families that are doing so well now, and then communicating that with other families where their kids are not in spaces that are doing that well. They're not going to blindly follow the status quo thinking in this party.
What do you
or
think
the
of what
state
the legislature did by literally, in the last minute, upending the kneecap requirement for graduation for the class of 2014? If I was Ed Commissioner Deb Gist, I'd say, you know what, kiss my grits, I'm out of here. Who needs this aggravation? What's your thoughts?
My thoughts is you need to measure, and I'll leave the measuring tool to the educators, but I think that you need to measure outcomes in schools. Our kids deserve that, and the families
You
do
think
as
there
well.
was do you think there was bad governing for the General Assembly to upend that? People who've really not studied the issue very much, and just even the Speaker of the House, who decided based on one person's story that he was going to support the idea that we postpone that requirement. I mean, my God, there was a lot of work and a lot of debate and a lot of funding that came in with this whole concept, and they ripped it out like that.
I believe you need to measure, and if you decide that you're going to take the measuring tool away, I think it would make sense to bring everybody together and have an option that would continue to measure the outcomes that are in our schools.
Is that your diplomatic way of saying they screwed up?
It's my diplomatic way of saying that status quo continues to prevail instead of some good thinking, and that's what I think is needs at the top of the Democratic Party and Democratic leadership in the state of Rhode Island, and I'm prepared to bring that.
How much money you got?
We're still raising money. You want to give
Not
us
for lunch. I'm just saying, it's like,
No, we're still ahead of the competitors right now by 2 to 1, 3 to 1. And we'll keep that margin. We're starting to spend it now.
And you'll take a debate here with the candidates, right?
I'd love a debate.
All right. Good to see you.
Yes. Okay. Good to see you.
All
too.
right. You don't have any other announcements to make, do you? You're good.
No, I'm running as a Democrat for Lieutenant Governor,
Okay.
and I'm happy to do so.
All right. There's some oxygen back in the room. Your state of mind, and we come back. Stay with us. Your state of mind, obviously, is important to me and to the rest of the viewers, and so here's how you get in touch with us. 228-1886 is the voicemail. stateofmind@myritv.com is the email. Of course, Dan York Show, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't forget the E, or it won't go through the social media. Here's an email in response to last night's program, I guess. Another issue is that people who need medication will find doctors that will prescribe it regardless. There are doctors from Rhode Island that will prescribe medicine that they have no business doing. Rob, and that's from our conversation about opiate addiction and all of that last night. You know what? Hopefully there are less and less doctors that are doing that, on the side with the bada bing. I think a lot of doctors just have to realize, and I think many are, that what they usually prescribe is becoming dangerous for too many people. All right, an interesting political day. We'll wrap it all up and continue our conversation with it tomorrow on the radio at noon on WPRO until 3. And of course, we'll be right back here on MyRITV at 7:30 with more on all of that. You have a great night. Thanks for watching.